Hello and welcome everyone to this another episode in ancient history of Bharat. I could not complete my reading yesterday. Yesterday being weekend, or rather the end of the week. I had some other commitments that I need to attend to, and I was not able to read up. Okay, so this video is going to be short compared to all the other episodes that we have done in the ancient history of Bharat. But stay assured from next episode onwards. I will make sure that I have sufficient amount of chapter to record these videos. Right. So I think we have already done the political and legal institutions. That is chapter number 21. I think we have to now move on to chapter number 22. Yes. So just have to be sure. I cannot just, once I have skipped the chapter, I cannot come back to that chapter and be like, oh no, this chapter is pending. Right. There is also another series going on parallelly, that is the Weekender. That is something that I do on in the Sunday evenings. Okay, what do I usually do on Sunday evenings is I go out cycling. I really enjoy that activity, so I'll cycle around, try to get in as much cardio as I can, because for cardio you need a ground. Okay, you need space. So I don't have that currently in my room. So as a cardio activity, I prefer cycling. It really clears my head. So after coming back from that activity, I'll record a video that goes by the name of Weekender. That is where you will hear my political commentary upon the events or the major events that transpired in our country in that particular week. Okay, so in the previous episode of Weekender, I have covered the Maharashtra elections, the Waqf board, the unrest in the Sambal area in the Uttar Pradesh, and something about Elon Musk as well. Okay, so if you get time, do check that out. Now let's focus on our next chapter, that is chapter number 22 in this book. So far we have covered many chapters in this book, all the chapters, not many, all the chapters. We have reached chapter number 22. Okay, the religion and the philosophy. What exactly was the religion, or what exactly was the philosophy? Now before we get into these things, okay, you really need to understand that the concept of religion is something that has come from the West. Okay, for them there are certain elements of their life that could be divorced from their religion. Okay, at least we are made to believe so. Okay, even the Constitution of the United States, a country that was supposedly and allegedly established on secular principles, and that state has nothing to do with religion. If you look at their Supreme Courts, it's written in bold letters, "In God we trust." Okay, they take their oath on Bibles. So what is this? Okay, so you cannot separate religion from the state. The idea of secularism is a farce, is a utopian idea that only exists in idealistic world. Where on the face of this earth would you find the state of a country that is completely and absolutely divorced from the religion of the majority populace? Absolutely nowhere. Okay, so why exactly is Bharat being dictated or put on a high pedestal to stand up to those standards that no, you have to be a secular country and establish an example for all the other countries? Okay, I think it's high time our political leaders stand up and say, no, thank you, we wouldn't like to set an example of being a secular state. Okay, but that's again besides the point. People have their own political convictions, we'll not get into that. Right now we'll only focus on chapter number 22 in this book, that is religion and philosophy. Interestingly, the first topic that R.C. Majumdar chose was the Atharva Veda. We have discussed in the previous video, the Atharva Veda is a compilation of hymns. Initially it was not included in the trio of the other three Vedas that were sacred and divine. The reason for this, or the reason given, explanation, not exactly reason, but the explanation given for this is Atharva Veda, it's some sort of, how shall I say this? Atharva Veda is a compilation of hymns that were mm, made, okay, by the commoners. Okay, keep in mind, like we have already discussed in our previous videos, whenever there is a power vacuum, obviously there are going to be people who will rush to occupy or fill that power vacuum, and once they have filled that power vacuum, they would you know create obstacles for others to not cross over into their space that they've occupied after filling the vacuum. Okay, so that is something that the priestly class did. Okay, and up to a certain extent, I would say yes, they are supposed to be held accountable for it. Okay, we cannot completely absolve them of any accountability. All right, but again, I would also come back to that logic of mine. If you think that the current day Muslims are not to be held responsible for all the monstrosities that were perpetrated by the Mughals, why exactly do we hold the more current day priestly class for all the things that they did years and centuries ago? This is something that I must think. And keep in mind, to give you context, why am I bringing out this analogy? I'm simply stating not the entire populace is on an equal footing. Okay, today there are citizens in our country who abide by different laws, and there are other citizens who abide by completely different laws. What sort of a democracy are we existing in? Okay, I'll obviously cover what are certain laws that certain communities in our country follow, and what are certain how can you have two separate sets of laws for two separate sets of people in a democratic country? That is completely beyond me. And why is no other political party standing up for these or not fighting on these principles? Again, that's something else entirely. We are going to focus on history right now. So yes, so Atharva Veda was written originally as a book of reference for the household people. Now, since they did not have money and resources to organize sacrifices on such a large extent, and they could not afford the priests who officiated at those sacrifices, but still they were convinced that we need to stick by the dharma. Okay, we cannot let it go simply because it is costly. So what did they do? They did the next best thing, that is writing the hymns for their own sacrifices that could be conducted in the comforts of their own home. They would not need the priests to officiate at those sacrifices. They could simply just do it by themselves. Okay, and that is what essentially Atharva Veda is, and hence this was one of the reasons why it was not included in the trio of the first three Vedas that were supposed to be divinely ordained. Okay. On page number 442, R.C. Majumdar writes, the gods are the same as the Rig Veda, Agni and Indra, but their characters have become quite colorless, all being invoked as demon destroyers, and their natural bases as utterly forgotten. Like I said, every other civilization or every other language is a living organism. Okay, and since they are a living organism, there are these phases of trial and error. Okay, so yes, the philosophy or the ancient Aryan faith started off as something else, but eventually with time, as the time progressed, definitely there were some modifications. We cannot deny that. Okay, let's see. Now there is R.C. Majumdar here also draws some parallels. Okay, here he writes, and this is why I disagree strongly and profoundly disagree with this idea of India, and I'm going to explain in a second why. R.C. Majumdar in this book on page number 443 he writes, among the Indians of North America, we are talking among the Indians of North America, among the Negro races of Africa, among Malays and Mongols, among the ancient Greeks and the Romans, and frequently still among the peasantry of the present day Europe, we find again exactly the same views, the same strange leaps of thought in the magic songs and magic rites, as have come down to us in the Atharva Veda of ancient Bharat. Okay, so this sentence starts off by saying among the Indians of North America. Okay, so who exactly are these Indians? Why are they called Indians? Did this ancient theory that was taught to us in our schools that we call ourselves Indians or our country is called India because the Greeks identified us by the name of the river Indus. Okay, then the name of river Indus was perverted to call us Indians. This is the theory that is taught to us in schools. So here it says amongst the Indians of North America. Does North America have a river named Indus? So why exactly are we calling them Indians? This is something that you must ask. India was a flimsy and a farce idea that was created, okay, to further a political narrative, especially of the Congress, because right after independence it was the only political party that came, I would say pushed further this idea of, India. There is no such thing as India. India is a word that is used to connote to a place where the message of Christ has not spread. The land where pagans live and the land where the gospel of Christ has to spread to convert people. That is what essentially India stands for. Now, do you subscribe to that idea? I will leave it to your better judgment. Okay, read up on it, find out what exactly it means. The idea of a supreme god like Prajapati as the creator and the preserver of the universe, and that of an impersonal creative principle, which form the two successive. Where is it? Okay. The idea of a supreme god like Prajapati as the creator and preserver of the universe, and that of an impersonal creative principle, which form the two chief doctrines of the Upanishads, and some technical terms such as Brahman, Tapas, Asat are met with in the Atharva Veda. Okay, there are also some new terms that were introduced in the Atharva Samhita. Okay, Kala or time as the first clause of all existence. Okay, it is written in the Atharva Samhita 5000 years ago that the time, okay, is the first clause of all existence. All of us know the meaning of clause. CLAUSE. Okay, so for something to exist, the first clause in the contract of their existence would be time. This is written in the Atharva Samhita. Okay, 5000 years ago, not more. Okay, similarly, prana, that is breath. Okay, there is a word for breathing in Atharva Veda that goes by the name of prana. And kama, that is love or lust, are described as the first clauses respectively also. Okay, now the other clauses, okay, let's not fight over which one is the first clause. The three clauses of existence that are mentioned in the Atharva Samhita are: first is time, okay, second is breathing, that is prana, and the third one is lust. These three are the evidences that you exist. Okay, the Rohita hymns in the Atharva Samhita contain a sublime glorification of the red one, the genius of the sun, as a cosmogonic power. Okay, there are also some hymns that have been listed to praise sun. Atharva Veda Mandala 10 hymn 2 is about an imitation of the philosophical hymn of the Rig Samhita and treats of the realization of Brahman in a man from the physical aspect. Atharva Veda Mandala 11 hymn 8 suggests that the idea of Brahman as the first cause of all existence and of the oneness of man with the world soul. So what exactly does this word Brahmana mean? Right now in our contemporary world, it has come to be recognized as a name of the families that belong to the priestly class. Okay, somebody who is a Brahman, somebody who belongs to the priestly class, we call them Brahman. Okay, but what exactly is the definition of that word? The definition of that word is given in Atharva Samhita. It says, okay, in Mandala 11 hymn 8, it says, the idea of Brahman as the first cause of all existence. If you want to know, you need to know this theory, and of the oneness of man with the world's soul. Okay, now I know all of you, all the people of majority of the people over here, or to those of you who are watching this video, okay, all are of an English persuasion. You'll not believe this, but if I draw out a parallel from one of the English scholars, you might be able to understand what this means. Okay, for those of you who have read Immanuel Kant was a German philosopher. He had a profound effect on the thinking of the West. Okay, he says the faculty of reason, okay, faculty of reason exists, universally. Okay, the faculty of reason that I have and the faculty of reason that you have are both of them same. Okay, this is what Immanuel Kant said. Alright, so that is what Atharva Veda means when it says Brahman. But once you realize that you are one with the whole world, your sense of reason is exactly the same as the sense of reason that the other person has. When oneness of man with the world soul, that is what is Brahman. Okay. Yes, I guess I might be wrong because I'm not a scholar, but I have read Immanuel Kant. I have read his book, The Critique of Pure Reason. Okay, but yes, this is something. This is what my understanding is. Okay, Atharva Veda religion, being thus more popular than priestly, formed a transitional stage to the idolatries and superstitions of the ignorant masses, rather than to the sublimated pantheism of the Upanishads, and further that it led to magic being confused with mysticism. Okay. Yes, so that Atharva Veda in a way is a transitional phase. The current form of Aryan faith that we practice, it's not exactly the way it is mentioned in the Rig Samhita. Okay, like I have said time and again, any culture, any belief system, any faith, okay, must have that inherent flexibility and elastic clause. If you are not willing to change with time, okay, then your faith cannot be true. Okay. Now there are certain things that were written in the Rig Samhita. We have done away with them. There are things that were written in Rig Samhita that are very controversial about the women in the current age. We did away with it. Okay. But that's not an argument to be made that our religion is a pagan religion. It is a pagan religion. So what? It is still better than majority of the monotheistic traditions. And that is something that is, a thorn in the flesh of the monotheists. They are not able to, rather I wouldn't use the word digest, because for whatever reasons, but yes, they are not able to digest this fact that a pagan belief system of Bharat is in a way, in any given way, is better than their monotheistic traditions. But that is again very controversial thing. YouTube will most likely ban me if I make a video on that and speak freely, but let's leave it at that, because the monotheists really they're really insecure, and they have very weak stomach when it comes to the criticism of their own faith. However, they are very vehement when it comes to criticizing the pagan faith of Bharat. Tells a lot about their insecurities, doesn't it? Alright, so yes, Atharva Veda in a way is a transitional phase. Okay, so look at it like this. In the Rig Samhita, the kind of Aryan faith that our ancestors practiced was completely different. And the kind of Aryan faith that we practice now, although we call it Hinduism, because the Persians and the Greeks called us Hindus, and hence we are supposed to call ourselves Hindus. That is again besides the point, but right now what I'm going to focus on is yes, so Atharva Veda in a way is a transitional phase. The Aryan faith that we practiced in the Rig Samhita and the Aryan faith that we practice now are two very different things. And the thing that lies in between them is the faith that was practiced by the Atharvans, people who lived during the age of Atharva Samhita. Alright? Now keep in mind, between all these phases there is centuries of time. It's not like, like 100 or 200 years. I would stretch it as far as even millennia. So between all these phases, there was millennia worth of time that had elapsed. Okay, let's see, there is this another view that is rather controversial. Let's see. Okay, it is generally held that the religion of the Atharva Veda is only an amalgam of the Aryan and the non-Aryan ideals achieved after the advance of the Aryans into Bharat. According to this view, the Vedic Aryans, as they advanced into India, okay, for them, this is again a white person writing. So when they say India, they mean the land where the gospel hasn't spread. Okay, remember the analogy? Why are the original inhabitants of North America called Indians? Do they also have a river named Indus? Hence the Greeks called them Indians. Think about it. Okay, so according to this view, the Vedic Aryans, as they advanced into Bharat, came across uncivilized tribes worshipping snakes, serpents, stocks, and stones. But instead of destroying these barbarian neighbors or allowing them to be swamped by them, the Aryans absorbed them. This is the theory that the West believes. Okay, when they came over here, they came across people who were worshipping snakes and serpents and stocks and stones. Okay, so instead of conquering them, okay, they absorbed them. Doesn't this contradict the theory of Aryan, race being a martial race? Why would they accommodate the, if indeed this theory is true, if indeed you believe that, Aryans were an imaginary race that came from outside, if you are a believer in that theory, why exactly would they accommodate the inhabitants? Okay, this is a blatant lie. Nobody came from outside. Alright, next up is the Samveda and the Yajurvedas, the Samhitas and the Brahmanas. Okay, the Samveda and the Yajurveda, the sacrifice dominates everything. These two Samhitas have been compiled strictly from the point of view of their use at the sacrifice. They were more like textbooks. Alright, these both the Samveda and the Yajurveda, they were more like textbooks. If you had to conduct a sacrifice, the hymns that were written in these books, had to be used. Interestingly, there is an entire page in this chapter that is dedicated to explaining how exactly was the sacrifice performed. Okay, if you have grown up you might have attended or maybe even officiated, not exactly officiated, but you might have presided over any of the havans or the pujas that have been done at your place. Okay, so when we call all those priests, okay, there will not be just one priest, there will be 4 priests. Okay, if you have not observed this, observe it the next time. Okay, this is something also came to me as a realization. I read it, and hence now that I reflect back upon it, okay, here it says whenever there was a sacrifice that was to be undertaken, that sacrifice will have 4 priests, not one. Okay, one of them would be whom? It's all given in the Samveda and Yajurveda. There are 4 people that are supposed to officiate at the sacrifice. Okay, the number 1 was, let me find it, it's somewhere over here. I might have read it somewhere else, but I'm sure where is it? Okay, so there are 4 people. The next time when you are attending or even sitting there as the person who is conducting, or sitting there with the person who is conducting a sacrifice, and when I say sacrifice, we don't exactly now do it the way the Aryans of the Rig Veda did. Okay, how do we do it now? We do it in the form of a havan. Okay, we don't exactly cut animals and put into the havan. We use coconuts, we used rice and all of that. Okay, so the next time when you call home some priests, Okay, ask them questions. Surprisingly, they will answer. They will not be offended by the questions you ask them. Okay, so the next time when you have any puja or any havan at your home, okay, ask them a bunch of questions and they will readily answer it. But okay, there will be 4 people who will conduct the havan. The first person would be, where is it, Hotri. Okay, that priest will be called Hotri, who is called an invoker, who was to praise the gods and invoke them to the sacrifice, and whose duty it was to form the sastra for each particular rite of the Soma sacrifice. Okay, so what did the Hotri do? Hotri praised the gods and prepared the weapon that was supposed to be used for the sacrifice in the earlier era. Now we don't sacrifice animals, so he might be doing something. So there is Hotri. Next is the Udgatri. Udgatri is the person who chants. He is the person who sings chants accompanying appropriately the various stages of presentation of the sacrifices, especially the Soma sacrifice. Okay, the second person who goes by the name of Udgatri, he chants all these hymns. The third one is known as the Advaryu. Advaryu is the performer who executes all the sacrificial acts, muttering simultaneously the prayers and the sacrificial formulae. Okay, so the Hotri, he is praising the god. The first priest is the Hotri, who is praising the gods, invokes the gods, prepares the weapon for the sacrifice. Second one is the Udgatri, who will chant the shlokas. The third one is the Advaryu, who will actually perform the sacrificial acts. And the last one is called the Brahman, that is the high priest. Okay, now the earlier 3 of them will be experts in either one of the Vedas, but the fourth, the Brahman, the high priest, will be expert in all the 4 Vedas, and hence he is called the high priest. Now what was the purpose of having a high priest? He will simply just sit there and guard the sacrifice. Okay, he will make sure that there is no error committed. Why? Because he is well versed and an expert and erudite in all the 4 Vedas. This is all of these things have been written down 5,000 years ago. Okay, the next time you have a puja or a havan at your place, ask these questions to the priest who come to conduct that puja, and most of them will be most of them will answer your questions. They'll not say that no, we cannot say these things. They'll answer these questions. Okay, so these grand sacrifices that were undertaken by people who were affluent and wealthy, so these grand sacrifices were called srota, or based on Shruti, in the sense that the description of their theory and practice was also embodied in the Shruti literature, that is the Samhitas and the Brahmanas. Whereas the domestic, as in people who did not have the money and resources to conduct sacrifices on such a grand scale, what did they do? Okay. Whereas the domestic or the Griya sacrifices referred to above were called smrata, based on smriti or memory, in the sense that they were described only in the Griya Sutras, which fall into smriti literature, which has no divine sanction and is authoritative only so far as it embodies the tradition derived from ancient sages. Okay, yeah, so there were some sacrifices that are mentioned in the Shrutis, where they are based on the written element, and there are other sacrifices that were practiced by the commoners at their home. They were largely based on memory. Okay. There is also something controversial that I have discovered. Remember, this is rather a pop culture thing. We have been made to believe that this, this humongous monstrosity that is there in Agra, that goes by the name of Taj Mahal. Okay, when it was constructed, the Mughal emperor who sanctioned the construction of that, structure, he managed to chop off the hands of the people or the craftsmen who contributed to the construction of that particular structure. Why? Simply because to maintain its, rare character, I would assume. There's nothing original about, Taj Mahal that you can you know, link it back specifically and exclusively to the Mughals. Okay, all the architectural styles that they've copied from the Persians, it's pretty much evident from the structure. It's just because majority of the people don't know about these things that they marvel at these, you know, replicas of the Persian construction. But that is again besides the point. All these things were taught to us through films, through textbooks, and all these things are a blatant lie. Alright, but we'll not get into that. What we are focusing on right now, there is something that was written 5000 years ago in these Samhitas, and I want you to focus on that. Okay, the Brahmanas record as an ancient. Now I say Brahmanas, I mean it in a literal sense. The texts, the commentaries on the Vedas are also known as Brahmanas. So in that, okay, the Brahmanas record as an ancient practice, no longer current, something that we don't no longer do, the slaying of a man during the building rite in order to secure the permanence of the structure. So whenever these, you'll see, okay, the next time when you conduct a havan at your place, you'll see that the priests, they arrive a little bit early than the stated time, and they will construct a structure where the havan is to be conducted. So in the Rig Vedic times, there was a specific individual who will erect that structure. And guess what? That person was to be killed after he erected that structure. Why? To ensure that that structure was permanent. Nobody would be again able to do the same work that he did. R.C. Majumdar mentions it. Okay. As the sacrifice is the only power that counts and could bend even the gods to the will of the sacrificer, the old gods are not of much consequence now. As a result of the minor deities of the Rig Samhita have either disappeared or exist in name only. Prajapati, the lord of the creatures, is the main subject of theosophical speculation in the Brahmanas, the literary one. But he is not a god of the people as Rudra is. Okay, this is also something that came as a surprise to me. Okay, let me just share it with you. I used to believe that, let me just read it first, otherwise I might trigger some sentiments. Okay, Rudra as Bhutapati is a dread figure who, we are told in Aitreya Brahmana, usurped the dominion of Prajapati over all cattle when the latter committed incest with his daughter. Remember, incest was one of the major crimes in the Rig Vedic times. Okay, so Prajapati, who is supposed to be the lord of all creatures, he allegedly had committed incest with his daughter. Okay, this raised the ire of Rudra, and he usurped the entire dominion of Prajapati. Okay, who is Prajapati? Indra. Okay, he appears at the sacrifice in black raiment and claims the sacrificial victim. This Rudra is, in all probability, not merely a development of the Rigvedic Rudra, but an adaptation of him by amalgamation with a popular god, a god of vegetation closely connected with pastoral life. He is thus the great god, Mahadev, and has already received the appellation Siva, the auspicious one, which became later his chief name. Okay, the Siva, the name that we use for the Mahadev, okay, his original name is Rudra, according to the Aitreya, Kaushitaki and Satpata Brahmana. All three texts mention this theory. So the original name of Shiva is Rudra. Okay, if you have some sort of explanation for this, I would really urge you guys to comment on this video. That is why we always keep our comment sections open. Why? Because there are major blanks that need to be filled when it comes to our faith. Okay, there is a lot of corruption and perversion that was done by the white scholars. Okay, all right. Next up in that the chapter, he writes, in the Purusha Sukta, the act of creation is treated as a sacrifice completely offered from which the three Vedas arose. The Satpata Brahmana version of this doctrine is that the self-existent breathed out the Vedas. The so-called authors of the Vedas are just inspired seers to whom the divine revelation was communicated. So at the very beginning, the individual that we like to call as Brahma, whose body was sacrificed to give us this world, okay, he was the one who breathed out all the Vedas. That is what R.C. Majumdar mentions. Okay, the Vedic tradition, considered sacred and infallible, must necessarily embody the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And since, okay, the body of the Brahma that was sacrificed to give us this world, okay, now that body transformed into all these Vedas, so all these Vedas are inevitably God. That is what R.C. Majumdar mentions in his book. That's all the reading that I could, that I could manage due to weekend, due to the end of the week. Alright, that's all for this video. I will see you guys in the next video. I hope you are enjoying this series. If you are, like and subscribe to our channel. Also share it with your friends who themselves are history buffs and like to indulge in debate. Okay, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.